A bombshell has just dropped in the world of Little People, Big World, sending shockwaves through the Roloff family and its fan base. In a stunning legal conclusion to a bitter and deeply personal battle, a judge has ordered Caryn Chandler to pay Amy Roloff a staggering $750,000. The charge? Defamation. The verdict? A decisive victory for Amy, who sources say feels completely vindicated after a brutal public fight for her reputation. This isn't just about money, it's about the truth. The court has officially branded Caryn Chandler a liar, finding her guilty of fabricating a malicious story with the express purpose of harming Amy. How did it come to this? What was the lie so damaging it resulted in a $750,000 judgment? We have the exclusive insider reports and a breakdown of the entire shocking court case. Before we dive deep into the court documents and witness testimonies, if you want to stay on top of every breaking story from the Little People, Big World universe, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to LPBW Update, and ring that notification bell. You are not going to want to miss a single detail of this incredible story. Our story begins not in a courtroom, but in the glossy pages of a national gossip magazine. To understand the motivation, we have to go back to the contentious period following Amy's final departure from Roloff Farms. The narrative for years had been messy. Fans were divided. Sources close to the situation say Caryn Chandler felt increasingly frustrated, believing she was being unfairly portrayed as the villain in the Roloff family saga. She saw Amy's growing success with her Amy Roloff's Little Kitchen brand and her happy marriage to Chris Marek as a constant public reminder of the fractured family dynamics. According to our insider reports, Caryn was determined to reshape the public perception, to cast herself not as a homewrecker, but as a savior who rescued both Matt and the farm from impending disaster. This is where the fatal mistake was made. She agreed to an exclusive tell-all interview with Celebrity Insider, a magazine known for its sensational headlines. The setup was perfect for Caryn's agenda. A cozy, intimate interview setting where she could finally tell her side of the story. And she did. The resulting article was explosive. The headline read, "Caryn Chandler, the woman who saved Roloff Farms from secret debt and disaster." In the interview, Caryn didn't just offer opinions. She made a specific factual claim that would become the basis for this entire lawsuit. She told the magazine, and by extension, the world, that when she took over the farm's bookkeeping, she uncovered a financial nightmare created by Amy. The key quote, the one that would cost her $750,000, was this: "It was a complete mess. Amy was fiscally irresponsible with the farm's resources. I discovered she had secretly run up over $200,000 in debt on the farm's credit cards. It was a mountain of unexplained expenses that I had to work tirelessly to clean up. Matt was devastated when he found out. I basically had to save the business." The story was a masterpiece of character assassination. It painted Amy not just as a poor manager, but as deceitful and reckless, secretly jeopardizing the family legacy. It positioned Caryn as the competent, responsible hero who swept in to fix the damage. The article went viral. The LPBW fan community was in an uproar. Suddenly, the narrative Caryn wanted was taking hold. People started questioning Amy's business acumen and her integrity. The damage was immediate. Sponsors for Amy's brand started asking questions. Negative comments flooded her social media. The lie was working exactly as intended. But Caryn had made a critical miscalculation. She had underestimated Amy Roloff. Amy, a woman who had built her life and career in the public eye, knew the value of her reputation. This wasn't just a personal insult. It was a direct attack on her livelihood and her character, the two things she had worked so hard to cultivate after leaving the farm. After consulting with her husband Chris and a team of high-powered attorneys, Amy made a decision that would change everything. She decided to fight back. not in the court of public opinion, but in a court of law. A lawsuit was filed. Amy Roloff versus Caryn Chandler and Celebrity Insider magazine for defamation and libel. The amount sought was specific: $750,000 in damages for harm to her reputation and business. The legal battle had officially begun. Legal experts we consulted noted that this was a high-risk, high-reward move for Amy. As a public figure, she wouldn't just have to prove the statement was false. She would have to prove it was made with actual malice, meaning Caryn either knew it was a lie when she said it or acted with a reckless disregard for the truth. This is a notoriously difficult standard to meet. Caryn and the magazine's legal teams were initially confident. They filed a motion to dismiss, claiming Caryn's statements were mere opinion, a subjective take on a messy financial situation. They argued that in the context of a messy divorce and business split, a little exaggeration was to be expected. The judge, however, disagreed. The claim of a specific $200,000 debt was not an opinion. It was an assertion of fact, a fact that could be proven true or false. The motion was denied. The case would go to trial. What followed was a grueling period of legal discovery. This is the phase where both sides are required to turn over all relevant documents, emails, and financial records. Amy's lawyers, armed with subpoena power, requested every single financial statement, credit card bill, and accounting ledger from Roloff Farms for the 5-year period Caryn mentioned in her interview. This was the moment the tide began to turn, long before anyone set foot in a courtroom. Sources from the legal camp report that as Amy's team sifted through the mountain of paperwork, they found no evidence whatsoever of the debt Caryn described. There was no $200,000 in secret credit card charges from Amy. In fact, the books were remarkably clean. The smoking gun they were looking for wasn't a hidden debt. It was the complete absence of one. The discovery process also included depositions, where lawyers get to question the opposing parties under oath. Caryn's deposition was reportedly a disaster. When confronted with the farm's actual financial records by Amy's lawyer, she was unable to point to any evidence supporting her claim. Her story began to change. The $200,000 was now an estimate. The secret debt was more of a general feeling of financial chaos. Under the pressure of sworn testimony, the specific damning claim she had made in the magazine was dissolving into vague, unprovable accusations. She was cornered. She had told the lie to the world, and now she was being forced to either admit it or perjure herself. She chose to equivocate, to blame messy records in the passage of time. It was a strategy that would ultimately backfire in spectacular fashion in front of a jury. The trial itself was the biggest drama the Roloff family had seen in years, taking place far from the familiar pumpkin patch. The courtroom was packed. Amy sat with her husband, Chris, looking composed but nervous. Caryn sat with Matt, who was there to offer moral support, looking defiant. The jury, a mix of men and women from all walks of life, had been carefully selected. They were told they would be the arbiters of the truth. Amy's lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Jessica Davenport, laid out their case in her opening statement. "This is a simple case," she told the jury. "It's about a lie. A specific, calculated, and malicious lie told for one reason and one reason only: to destroy the reputation of my client, Amy Roloff." The defendants, Caryn Chandler and Celebrity Insider, didn't just print an opinion, they printed a factual fabrication. They claimed Amy Roloff secretly ran up $200,000 in debt. We are here today because that is provably, demonstrably, 100% false. We will show you the proof, and we will ask you to hold the defendants accountable for the damage their lie has caused. Caryn's lawyer countered, painting a picture of a chaotic business environment. He argued that Caryn was not a trained accountant and had simply done her best to make sense of a confusing situation. He portrayed her as a whistleblower of sorts, who perhaps got the exact number wrong, but was correct in her overall assessment that the farm's finances were messy under Amy. He would argue there was no malice, only a misunderstanding. It was a plausible defense, but it hinged on the idea that the financial records were ambiguous enough to be misinterpreted. That was about to be proven completely wrong. The trial proceeded with witness testimony. Financial experts hired by Amy's team took the stand one after another and testified that a thorough audit of the farm's books revealed no such debt. They described the farm's finances during the period in question as standard for an agricultural business, with predictable ebbs and flows, but no signs of the kind of recklessness Caryn had alleged. The magazine's editor was called to the stand and grilled about their fact-checking process, which was revealed to be virtually non-existent. They had simply taken Caryn's word as gold because it made for a juicy story. Their credibility was shredded. But the main event, the moment everyone was waiting for, was Caryn Chandler's cross-examination. This was the key scene, the climax of the entire legal battle. Caryn took the stand, initially appearing confident and composed. She repeated her claims, softening them slightly, but sticking to the core of her story. Then, Amy's lawyer, Ms. Davenport, rose to question her. The atmosphere in the courtroom became electric. Davenport began calmly. "Ms. Chandler, good afternoon. I'd like to direct your attention to your interview with Celebrity Insider. You were quoted as saying, and I quote, 'I discovered she has secretly run up over $200,000 in debt on the farm's credit cards.' Did the magazine quote you correctly?" Caryn shifted in her seat. "Yes, that's what I said. It was a chaotic time." Davenport continued, her voice even. "So in your interview, you claimed my client, Amy Roloff, ran up $200,000 in debt. Is that correct?" Caryn tried to deflect, just as she had in her deposition. "The farm was in financial disarray when I took over the books," she said, avoiding a direct answer. "There were many unexplained expenses." Davenport was relentless. She walked closer to the witness stand. "That's not what I asked, Ms. Chandler. I asked if you stand by your specific claim of a $200,000 debt. A simple yes or no will suffice." "I stand by the sentiment that things were a mess," Caryn hedged. "I see," Davenport said, letting the non-answer hang in the air for the jury to absorb. Then she turned to her table. "Your Honor, I would now like to present what has been marked for identification as Exhibit C." A court bailiff carried a set of several large, heavy binders and placed them on a table in front of Caryn. The thud they made echoed in the silent courtroom. "Ms. Chandler," Davenport announced, her voice rising with authority, "before you are the complete, audited credit card statements and financial ledgers for Roloff Farms for the entire 5-year period in question. These are the very books you claim were in disarray. Can you please do us the favor of going through these records, which you claim to have cleaned up, and point out to the jury where exactly this $200,000 of secret debt from my client is located?" This was the moment of truth. All eyes were on Caryn. She began shuffling through the papers, her earlier confidence visibly evaporating. The pages were filled with neat columns of numbers, receipts, and invoices. There was nothing to hide behind. The records were not a mess at all. They were meticulously organized. She flipped a few pages, then a few more, a look of panic growing on her face. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. "Well," Caryn stammered, looking up helplessly, "it was a long time ago. The records were a mess when I got them. I can't find them right now." Davenport pounced. "You can't find it right now, or you can't find it because it never existed." She walked over to the binders and opened one to a pre-marked page. "Let me help you, Miss Chandler. In fact, these records, the real records, show that the largest expenses during this period were not secret shopping sprees. They were for things like a $50,000 down payment on a new tractor, an essential piece of farm equipment. A purchase, according to this invoice right here, that was personally approved not by Amy, but by Mr. Matt Roloff. Are you suggesting Mr. Roloff was also being fiscally irresponsible? Caryn was speechless. Matt, sitting in the gallery, looked down at the floor. Davenport wasn't finished. She flipped to another marked page. And what's this? Another major expenditure. A $30,000 payment to an independent contractor for bookkeeping and farm management services. Let's see the name on that payment. Why, it's Ms. Caryn Chandler. You, Miss Chandler. A significant portion of the unexplained expenses you had to clean up were, in fact, paychecks going directly to you. A gasp went through the courtroom. The jury was now staring intently at Caryn, their expressions a mixture of shock and dawning comprehension. Davenport lowered her voice, delivering the final devastating blow. The truth is, there was no $200,000 debt, was there, Miss Chandler? There was no financial disarray. You had access to all of these documents. You knew the truth. You invented this story, this specific number, to hurt my client's reputation. You did it to make yourself look like a hero and to make her look like a villain in the public eye. Isn't that the truth? Caryn's face was flushed. That's not true, she insisted, but her voice lacked all conviction. Davenport's voice was cold as ice. Then show me the proof, she challenged, gesturing to the mountain of evidence in front of Caryn. You made a specific claim of fact, not an opinion. The jury can see that the proof does not exist. It does not exist because your story is a lie you told with malice. The cross-examination was over. Caryn Chandler's credibility was utterly destroyed. She had been exposed under oath in front of a jury in a packed courtroom as someone who had fabricated a damaging story and then was unable to back it up with a single shred of evidence. The rest of the trial was a formality. In their closing arguments, Caryn's lawyers did their best to perform damage control, but it was hopeless. They argued that Caryn was not a malicious person, merely an unsophisticated bookkeeper who had misinterpreted the numbers. But the jury had seen the evidence for themselves. They had seen Caryn on the stand, unable to defend her own words. Amy's lawyer, in her closing, simply restated the facts. She held up the magazine article. They called her fiscally irresponsible, she said, her voice filled with emotion. They printed a lie that she ran up a $200,000 debt. This lie damaged her business. It hurt her personally. It was told with malice, with a reckless disregard for the truth, for one simple reason: to make a good story and to settle a personal score. Words have consequences. Lies have a price. And we are asking you, the jury, to set that price. The jury filed out of the courtroom to begin their deliberations. The wait was agonizing for both sides. For Amy, it was the culmination of a long and painful fight to reclaim her name. For Caryn, her financial future and public reputation hung in the balance. The question was no longer if she had lied. The cross-examination had made that painfully clear. The only question now was how much she was going to have to pay for it. After only 3 hours of deliberation, a shockingly short amount of time for a case of this magnitude, the jury sent word that they had reached a verdict. The courtroom reassembled, the tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. The jury foreman, a middle-aged woman, stood and handed the verdict to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. The judge read it silently, his face unreadable. He then handed it back to the foreman. In the matter of Roloff versus Chandler in Celebrity Insider magazine, on the count of defamation, the foreman began, her voice clear and steady. We, the jury, find for the plaintiff, Miss Amy Roloff. A wave of relief washed over Amy's face. She reached for Chris Merrick's hand. The foreman continued. On the question of damages, we award the plaintiff, Miss Amy Roloff, compensatory damages in the full amount sought, $750,000. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Caryn Chandler's face went white. $750,000. It was a life-altering amount of money. The jury had not just sided with Amy. They had sent a powerful message. They had awarded the exact amount Amy had asked for, a sign that they completely and utterly believed her and were disgusted by Caryn's actions. But the verdict wasn't the final word. That belonged to the judge. The judge looked over at Caryn in the defense table, his expression stern. He then delivered a scathing rebuke that would be quoted in news articles for weeks to come, a public dressing down that was arguably as damaging as the monetary award itself. The jury has spoken, and this court concurs completely, the judge began, his voice booming through the silent room. In this country, freedom of speech is a cherished right. However, that right does not extend to the freedom to knowingly and maliciously destroy another person's reputation with fabrications. The jury has found that the defendant's statements were not only false, but were made with a reckless disregard for the truth, meeting the legal standard of actual malice. He looked directly at Amy. Reputational harm is real, especially for a public figure whose livelihood depends on their public image and integrity. This court recognizes the significant damage that was done to Ms. Roloff's brand and her personal standing in the community as a result of these lies. Then his gaze shifted back to Caryn and the magazine's lawyers. This court affirms the jury's verdict in its entirety. Judgment is entered in favor of the plaintiff, Ms. Amy Roloff, in the amount of $750,000 to be paid by the defendants. Furthermore, the defendants are ordered to print a full and unequivocal retraction of the original story in the next issue of Celebrity Insider, with a prominence equal to that of the defamatory article. This judgment is not just about compensation, it is about correction of the public record. This court is now adjourned. The gavel fell with a final resounding crack. It was over. Amy had won. She had not only secured a massive payday, but more importantly, she had achieved a complete and total public and legal vindication of her character. The aftermath was swift and brutal for Caryn. She was now legally and officially branded a liar. The news of the verdict spread like wildfire. The narrative she had worked so hard to create had not just failed, it had blown up in her face, costing her $750,000 and leaving her reputation in tatters. Amy, on the other hand, was triumphant. She walked out of the courthouse, not with a look of gloating, but with one of profound relief. She had faced the lie head-on and had emerged with her name cleared and her integrity intact. For Amy Roloff, it was the ultimate justice. The lie had a price, and Caryn Chandler was now forced to pay it in full. The long, dark chapter was finally closed, but the scars and the consequences of this epic legal war would undoubtedly reshape the future of the Roloff family forever. The balance of power had shifted, and the truth, backed by a court of law, had finally won the day. The reverberations from the judge's gavel are only now beginning to be felt, and what we are hearing from sources close to the Roloff family is that the public verdict was just the beginning of the nightmare for Caryn Chandler and, by extension, Matt Roloff. The real fallout, the personal and financial devastation, is happening right now behind the closed doors of the big house on Roloff Farms. The $750,000 question on everyone's mind is a simple one. How on earth is Caryn going to pay? Let's break down the immediate aftermath. As Amy Roloff and her husband Chris Marek walked out of the courthouse, they were met with a flash of cameras. Amy didn't give a lengthy statement. She didn't need to. Her lawyer had done the talking, and the verdict spoke for itself. She simply said, "Today, the truth won. I'm grateful to the jury and the court for seeing this for what it was. My reputation is all I have, and I'm just so relieved to have my name cleared. Now I just want to go home and cook a meal for my husband." It was a statement of pure grace and quiet victory. She appeared not triumphant, but unburdened. The weight of the lie had finally been lifted. Contrast that with the image of Caryn Chandler and Matt Roloff. They were hustled out a side exit by their legal team, refusing to answer any questions. Eyewitnesses described Caryn as looking pale and shell-shocked, while Matt was visibly furious, his face a mask of grim anger. They were sped away in a black SUV, but the real storm was waiting for them back at the farm. Our insiders are reporting that the drive back to the farm was one of stony, agonizing silence. The shock had not yet given way to the full-blown panic that was to come. That panic is now in full swing, because the judgment is not a symbolic number. It is a legally enforceable debt. Amy Roloff's lawyers can and will begin the process of collecting that $750,000. So, where does that money come from? Let's be realistic. Caryn Chandler, before her relationship with Matt and her prominent role on the show, was a farm manager. While her salary from TLC and any compensation from Matt is certainly substantial, it is highly unlikely she has $750,000 in liquid assets just sitting in a bank account. This isn't a fine she can pay off in installments over 30 years. This is a massive debt that Amy's legal team will want satisfied promptly. This leads to the first major crisis point. Caryn's personal assets. Does she own property, investments, a retirement portfolio? All of these are now on the line. We could see legal maneuvers to place liens on any property she owns, to garnish her wages directly from TLC, and to seize assets. Imagine the humiliation. The woman who tried to brand Amy as fiscally irresponsible could now be facing personal bankruptcy because of a lie. The irony is staggering. But this brings us to the elephant in the room, the one-ton gorilla sitting right in the middle of the Roloff family living room, Matt Roloff. Will Matt bail her out? This is the question that is reportedly tearing their relationship apart at the seams. On one hand, he is her partner, her fiancé. He has publicly stood by her throughout this ordeal. To let her face financial ruin alone would be a public and private betrayal of catastrophic proportions. But on the other hand, this was her lie. She was the one who went to the magazine. She was the one who made the specific factual claim that was proven to be a fabrication. Sources inside the farm are telling us that the arguments have been explosive. The core of the conflict, we're told, is Matt's fury over the sheer stupidity of it all. He's a businessman. He understands risk. According to one source, he yelled at Caryn, "What were you thinking? A specific number? 200,000? Why couldn't you just say you felt things were messy? You handed them the gun to shoot you with." The issue for Matt isn't just the money, it's the public humiliation and the legal corner they are now backed into. He sees it as a completely unforced error, a self-inflicted wound born out of personal animosity towards Amy. Caryn, we are hearing, is firing back. Her defense is that she was doing it for them, for their reputation. She felt Matt was being victimized by Amy's public narrative, particularly after Amy's book was released, which contained passages that were critical of Matt. Caryn saw her magazine interview as a way to fight back, to defend Matt's honor and her own. A source close to Caryn's side of the argument paraphrased her position like this: "I did this for us, Matt. I was tired of you being the bad guy. I was trying to protect you, and you stood right by me when I did it. Don't you dare act like this was all me." This is the crucial point that complicates everything for Matt. How involved was he? Did he know Caryn was going to make up a specific number? Did he encourage the interview? Did he approve her quotes? Amy's lawyers certainly tried to explore this, but they couldn't definitively prove his direct involvement in the lie itself. But the court of public opinion is another matter. To most observers, it seems impossible that Caryn would launch such a specific attack without Matt's knowledge and, at the very least, his tacit approval. He has been her biggest defender. Now, that defense comes with a $750,000 price tag. So, Matt is faced with an impossible choice. If he pays the debt, he is essentially admitting some level of responsibility and bailing Caryn out of a mess of her own making, potentially creating a deep well of resentment in their relationship. He would be liquidating a significant portion of his wealth, money from the farm he fought so hard to control, to pay his ex-wife because his new partner lied about her. If he doesn't pay it and forces Caryn to declare bankruptcy or sell off all her assets, their relationship is almost certainly over. How could it survive that kind of financial abandonment? He is trapped. Our theory is that he will ultimately have to pay, but the damage this will do to their relationship is incalculable. It will forever be a source of bitterness and a reminder of this humiliating defeat. Every time they look at the farm, they'll know a piece of it was sold off or a major loan was taken out. Not for a new tractor or a business expansion, but to pay for a lie. Now, let's widen the lens and look at the rest of the family. The children's reaction has been a seismic event in itself. This verdict didn't just create a rift, it poured concrete into the existing cracks, solidifying the battle lines. The most significant reaction has come from Zach and Tori Roloff. Their estrangement from Matt and Caryn has been a central plot point of the show for the past few seasons, stemming from the failed negotiations over the north side of the farm. They have felt for a long time that something was fundamentally wrong with the dynamic on the farm and with Caryn's influence over Matt. For them, this verdict is not a surprise. It is a profound vindication. A source very close to the couple tells us that when Tori heard the news, her first reaction was to call Amy and just cry with relief. For years, Zach and Tori have felt that Caryn has been manipulative and has not had the family's best interests at heart. This legal judgment, branding Caryn a malicious liar, confirms all of their worst fears and suspicions. It validates their decision to distance themselves and their children from the toxic environment on the farm. We are hearing that Zach has had a brief but icy conversation with Matt. He didn't gloat, but he made it clear where he stood. The message was simple: you chose this, you sided with a liar against our mom, and now you have to live with it. The chasm between Matt and his son, Zach, may now be utterly unbridgeable. This wasn't a business dispute anymore. This was about fundamental character and morality. Jeremy and Audrey Roloff have been more publicly quiet, which is their typical style. They tend to stay out of the direct family drama, focusing on their own brand and homestead. However, no one should mistake their public silence for neutrality. Audrey has always been close with Amy. They share a deep Christian faith and a focus on family and homemaking. The idea of someone maliciously lying to destroy another's reputation is anathema to everything they publicly stand for. Privately, we are hearing that they are disgusted but not surprised. They see this as the inevitable outcome of the path Matt and Caryn have been on for years. They will continue to support Amy, and this verdict only solidifies their private opinion of Caryn. For them, it is a confirmation that stepping away from the farm and the show's drama to forge their own path was the smartest decision they ever made. Then there are Jacob and Isabel Roloff, the family's most outspoken members when it comes to social justice and authenticity. They have long been seen as being firmly in Team Amy. Jacob, in the past, has made public statements alleging mistreatment during his time on the show. He has always positioned himself as a truth teller. A verdict like this, which legally confirms a massive and malicious deception at the heart of the family, is everything he has been implicitly warning about for years. Sources tell us Jacob sees this as a moment of karmic justice. He feels his mother was bullied and manipulated for years, and he is immensely proud of her for standing up for herself and winning. We expect to see some characteristically cryptic but pointed social media posts from both him and Isabel in the coming weeks, celebrating truth and condemning deception. So, for the children, this isn't just a win for their mom, it's a defining moment for the entire family. It has clarified who stands with whom and has likely severed some of these fractured relationships permanently. The idea of a happy, blended Roloff family Christmas with everyone around the same table seems more impossible now than ever before. Beyond the family, let's look at the professional fallout, which is twofold. First, there's the matter of that court-ordered retraction. The next issue of Celebrity Insider magazine is going to be a collector's item for all the wrong reasons. They are legally required to print a full retraction with equal prominence to the original story. Imagine that. Right there on a full page where they would normally have a sensational headline about a celebrity affair, they will have to print a humble, legally vetted apology. It will have to state that their previous story was false, that Amy Roloff did not run up a $200,000 debt, and that they retract the story in its entirety. This is a credibility-destroying event for the magazine and a massive public shaming for Caryn Chandler. Every single person who read the original lie will now have the opportunity to read the court-ordered truth. It's a brutal and humiliating public consequence. But the biggest professional question mark hangs over the show itself. Little people, big world. TLC now has a PR nightmare on its hands. One of its main stars, Caryn Chandler, has been found liable for defamation in a court of law. She has been ordered to pay a massive sum for telling a malicious lie about another main star, Amy Roloff. How do they handle this on the show? Do they ignore it? That seems impossible. The tension is the entire story now. Do they address it head on? Can you imagine the scene? A producer asks Caryn on camera, "So Caryn, how are you planning to pay the $750,000 you now owe to Amy for that lie you told?" The entire premise of the show, which has been transitioning to focus more on Matt and Caryn's life on the farm, is now built on a foundation of a legally proven lie. There are reports that emergency meetings are happening at TLC. The network has a few options, all of them bad. They could fire Caryn from the show, which would dramatically alter its structure and likely infuriate Matt. They could try to force Matt and Caryn to film scenes discussing the verdict, which would be incredibly awkward and potentially explosive. Or they could cancel the show altogether, deciding that the family dynamic has become too tight and legally fraught to continue broadcasting. The future of Little People, Big World is more uncertain today than at any point in its long history. Caryn's lie might not have just cost her a fortune, it might have cost her and Matt their television show. Finally, let's circle back to the winner in all of this, Amy Roloff. She has walked through fire and come out stronger on the other side. She took an immense risk. Lawsuits like this are emotionally draining and incredibly expensive. If she had lost, she would have been out hundreds of thousands in legal fees and would have seen Caryn's lie validated. But she rolled the dice on the truth and she won. The $750,000 is, of course, a life-changing amount of money. It provides her with a level of financial independence and security that is the ultimate reward. She can invest it, expand her Amy Roloff's Little Kitchen brand, travel the world with Chris, and secure her future, all paid for by the woman who tried to tear her down. But as we said at the beginning, this was never just about the money, it was about her name. For years after the divorce, Amy had to endure a narrative that she was bitter, difficult, and unable to move on. Caryn's lie was the culmination of that narrative, an attempt to paint her as incompetent and deceitful. By taking this to court and winning so decisively, Amy has rewritten her own story. She is no longer just the ex-wife living in the shadow of the farm. She is a woman who was wronged, who stood up for herself against powerful forces, and who was vindicated by the truth. She has the legal judgment, the money, and the moral high ground. She is free. The future for the Roloffs is a fractured and uncertain one. The farm, once a symbol of family unity and success, is now tainted by this scandal. It is the backdrop for a bitter feud, a place whose finances were the subject of a malicious lie that resulted in a devastating legal defeat. The relationships between father and sons, mother and ex-husband, are in tatters. But for Amy Roloff, the future looks brighter than ever. She has her husband, her children's unwavering support, her successful business, and a $750,000 check to cash. And more than that, she has the truth on her side. In the end, the lie Caryn Chandler told to ruin Amy's reputation did the exact opposite. It made her more respected, more powerful, and a whole lot richer. The ultimate irony is that Caryn's attempt to make Amy the villain only ended up exposing who the real villain was all along.